Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Clark, and welcome to the Boozadelic Chronicles. This is a You Matter Be Healthy edition, and it is my pleasure. Today, I have a special guest to talk about some massage therapy, some personal training. I've known this brother for a long, long time, so with no further ado, let me introduce Dejan Culpepper of thebalancedhand.com.
How's it going, Clark?
It's going good, my brother. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm doing well.
Good. Let's get right to it. I said that I've known you for a number of years. We go back to days at a national fitness chain. Uh,
Right.
so let's go ahead and talk about some stuff that people can really grasp as far as taking care of themselves today. I really want to dive into that. So what's
Okay.
your story, Dijon?
Story. It can go way far back. I'd say I always tell people I've been into fitness in general for about 30 years. My father bought me a weight set back when I was a young guy in Chicago, and that kept me out of the street. So that transferred over into high school. Some years later, I left Chicago, found myself here in the Northwest, actually Southwest Washington, Vancouver, which is where I am right now. And when I moved down here, I went to work for 24 Hour Fitness, and they had many different positions, and I was in a sales position. So sales position is where I was when you and I originally met at the Great Hollywood Club of Portland, Oregon. And in sales, actually in that club, I'll say in particular, we just had a real strong group of trainers. And I was already into bodybuilding. Like I said, I'd already been into the bodybuilding since I was a young guy, but I was competitively bodybuilding. And a lot of people who knew me in the gym knew me because I was on the workout floor, and they saw me going through these 12 and 16-week transformations, getting ready for competitions. So at that club you and I were at, I was influenced by the training staff to become a trainer because so many people kept asking me to train them. And that's how I made the transition over into personal training. So from personal training, being with that staff, and one thing that you're familiar with, we had a no nonsense staff when it came to training. These were not people who were just trying to make their clients sweat. They were there to help their clients correct issues. They were there to help their clients get stronger, to actually learn new habits. So when you came in as a new trainer with the Hollywood staff, they they weren't hesitant to pull you to the side after you train somebody and they say, "Hey, Deshaun, what the hell was you doing with your client?" And I say, "Oh, I was doing so and so." They said, "Nah, that's bullshit. Come over here. I'm gonna show you." I'm sorry. Am I free to speak?
Hey, man, this is the
Sorry if I'm
Boozadelic
using it.
Chronicles. You say what you want, how you like.
Okay, I was gonna say I'm using explicitives, but working with that particular crew, they will pull me to the side real easily and say, "Hey, no, no, no. I know what you were trying to do, but let me show you the right way to do it." And it was never just one person. It was the whole crew. They made sure that you were taking care of your people because they had a reputation to hold, and they cared about the people. So my first few years of training, I was with guys that were teaching me something new every day, and I lived in that gym. So that was a real big deal for me. And the programs that we were running at that time were all based around corrective exercise. So you're learning how to teach people proper stretching. You're learning how to teach people the proper way to use foam rollers, the proper way to do corrective movements. But you still have your hands tied a little bit as a trainer because you're not supposed to be putting your hands on people. You're supposed to just show them. And I
Right.
wanted to move to the next step after I'd been a trainer for 8 years, 8, 9 years. So actually, no, I hadn't been I'd been a trainer for what, maybe 5 years at the time, and I was ready to make the next step. I didn't want to go into physical therapy because the amount of schooling they wanted you to go through was the same as what a doctor would go through, but you didn't have the same freedom as a doctor when it came to actually setting things for your client. You had to still take directives from a doctor at the time. So that's how I ended up going to massage school because I had clients who were massage therapists, and one client in particular showed me what she did. And she says, "Look, this is the kind of work I do." And I was like, "Hey, that's right up my alley. That's what I want to do for my clients. I want to show them that a little bit of a manual manipulation, with them doing the strength training on the side to complement what I'm showing them, will help them get on the right track. And I ended up going into massage therapy thinking I was going to be a personal trainer who did massage, and I ended up being a massage therapist who knows a shit ton about personal training. So
Well, that's a great combination to have. I mean, it's like you can really pretty much give your clients a holistic approach to wellness.
that's really what it comes down to for me. Having the background that I do have athletically, high school sports, then moving on into strength training and making a profession out of that, and going into bodybuilding. With bodybuilding, everything's not always about strength, but it's about having the balance of the muscles. And then the corrective exercise background, for me, knowing how a person's body should be moving and knowing what the body is able to do function wise, when someone comes to me with an issue, I visualize things differently than just putting my hands on a person and saying I'm going to try to make this muscle feel better. I try to figure out what they're restricted in and show them what to do to get out of that restriction. So it does a lot. It does a lot to know the things that I know from the personal training aspect, and then being able to apply that to helping a person actually get the most out of the manual work that I do.
So let me ask you this. So having the bodybuilding, mentality and training all those years, and then coming into the, fitness center and starting with sales, then going into personal training, how difficult was it for you? Because I know there's a lot of exercise that we typically do for bodybuilding training that
Mhm.
might not be, biomechanically correct.
Well, here's the funny side for me. Like I say, I was it was really flat out 30 years ago. When I was young, now when you're young, everything's visual to you. So when my father bought me my first weight set and he had a subscription to Muscle and Fiction magazine,
Muscle fiction, I love it.
my father was also a pharmacist. So I had a house full of vitamins, a house full of supplements. Like the I grew up in a healthy environment, but visually looking at these magazines back in the day of Lee Haney and Kevin Levrone and uh, Linda Murray, all of these top level bodybuilders, and looking at these photo shoots and stuff, I equated bodybuilding with being strong. So I always wanted to be strong. I'm not the tallest dude. I've never been a super big guy. Some people will say I am, but I don't think I am. I just wanted to be strong when I was younger. I wanted to be the fast kid on the block. I wanted to be bad as hell on my bike. I wanted to do flips. I wanted to do all of that. And that's what I equated lifting weights to, was getting stronger and being able to do more. So if you told me something was going to make me stronger, that actually lifting weights was how I ended up playing sports, because I wanted to be in the weight room at high school. I changed my lunch period around and everything to work out with the athletes. And they was like, nah, come play football, come wrestle. So I had a great coach who said, my coach literally, he laughs because I talk to him till this day, my high school coach. He laughs because back in the day, he used to say, why you worried about carbs? You ain't no bodybuilder, you an athlete. Now he laughs when I tell him I'm a pro bodybuilder. He says, oh, so you did end up being a bodybuilder. But when he would tell me, no, do this because it'll make you stronger, I said, okay. Now, at a young age, you lift weights, the body's going to come with it. You're going to get the look, you're going to get the aesthetic. Now, I already had that mentality of lifting for strength. And when I started getting into bodybuilding and I had people coach me more in bodybuilding, I learned moves that were strictly for aesthetics. So the lucky side for me was I did not have an aesthetically based mindset when I was younger. I learned more about the aesthetic side of training when I got older. And once I learned about the aesthetic side of training, of course, that helped me get the look. And the look was convincing for clients, but I had the trainers around me that said, well, you can do that stuff for the look, but this is what we do for the performance. So I'm one of those people who just got blessed to get this um, well-rounded hands-on education. And I got a chance to see the difference from one to the other. There were trainers that we worked with. Let's see. You had Will Below. Will Below was one of the guys there at the gym. Will was strong as a freaking ox. Now, He was strong as an ox. He was athletic. This dude did everything. You remember him. Wouldn't be surprised if you still have contact with him. But if we were to put him on a bodybuilding stage, that wasn't gonna work.
Right.
But the dude was still a physical specimen, and he was strong. But he was a person who was very much about the balanced training. Same thing with Tommy Rudge, who is owner of one of the biggest CrossFit gyms here in Oregon now. Same thing. So when you get around these guys that are able to show and prove that there's a reason behind the corrective work and the strength training, and you know that there's a reason behind the aesthetic-based work, if you can put that all together, which the funny side for me is, for many years I told people, I said, look, I'm going to combine the aesthetic work with the functional work with the manual work. That's what I'm going to create. And people used to say, man, now you need to just pick one. And to this day, I'm still throwing middle fingers at them people because folks come to me for all of it. But that was my vision. When I started finding the little pieces that I loved and that made sense, and figuring out how to put it all together. And like I say, I was just blessed with it. Like you and I, we even had a conversation talking about that corrective exercise. That was one of the biggest things to learn is, oh, your person can't move this way and that way. So this is what's tight. This is what needs to be strengthened. So I don't even know if I want to say I lucked up or if it was just the path I was meant to be on, but I got the opportunity to see all those different sides over the course of a 30-year period.
Truly utilizing the vibrational frequency of the universe, as I like to say, because you stuck with the vision and you were exposed to all the stuff at an early age, and you found a way to manifest it into what you really enjoy doing.
Right.
That's what it's all about. You mentioned the corrective exercise component. And for those that aren't familiar with it, the certifications that we have are from the National Academy of Sports Medicine, NASM for short. And it's pretty much the flagship of certifications in the industry.
Right.
And the corrective exercise, I can't emphasize enough how important this is, because as trainers, a lot of times we'd have people come into the gym that hadn't trained in years. You know, they wanted to relive tennis or whatever, and they get out there and they can hurt themselves if they don't know what they're doing. And that's why we would spend the first couple of weeks basically training them on corrective exercise to get the body stabilized with the tendons and ligaments and that.
Right. And it's an interesting deal because we talk about those certifications, and the NASM certification in particular, you always had to get the certified personal trainer cert first. And one thing that I learned with the CPT versus the CES, which is the corrective exercise strengthening, the CPT model was all based on the corrective exercise model. So I learned the corrective exercise model just by learning how NASM taught you to be a personal trainer. So it's such a big deal, and it's interesting because we live in a very much microwave society where people, especially now with the advent of social media and how strong it is, people see the end results that folks have. And when they see these end results, they say, I want that, but they don't understand how much work goes into it. You know, Clark, you have an amazing story that began so many years ago that I learned about when I first met you back in 06, or actually 05, 06. You know, my story, when I talk about having built a base from the age of 12 years old, being 30 years of being under heavy weight and training and going through injuries and so forth, so on. People will come, like you said, they come to us and they're like, hey, I want this or I want that. And it's either they haven't done anything since high school, or they've never done anything and they don't understand. You can't take a car straight off the lot and throw it in the race. You can't take a car straight off the side of the road with a for sale sign on it and throw it in the race. You got to do a lot of tune up, a lot of preparatory work. And you got to make sure that everything, you got to change the spark plugs, get the oil cleaned out, new filters. Folks don't understand that all the way through and through. And that's where it comes in for us, getting people to understand, like you said, those first couple of months, we got to make sure your joints are okay. we got to see how much load you can actually bear in your knees. If I'm asking you to squat, how much can you actually put over your head? What can your shoulders handle? You know, how's your spinal alignment? What's the strength like in your back? All these things that people don't think about day to day, because as humans, we tend to walk around and adjust to whatever our injury is. We adjust to whatever our work environment is. We adjust to the discomfort, and we learn to live with it until we can't live with it anymore. And it's like I say all the time, most people don't realize how sick they really are. Most people are so comfortable being sick that they don't realize they're sick.
Right. And that's really could be one of the factors in why people just get out of the habit, because they start feeling so bad. It's just like, oh, I'm just getting old. I mean, I remember when I was younger, and I would hear somebody referring to somebody that was 35 years old, and I made a comment one time about one of my cousins. I said, man, he's got a gut on him now, and they're like, well, he's old now, he's 35. And
Right.
I was thinking then, I said, I'll be damned if I look like that when I'm 35, and here I am now, coming close to 60, been through hell and back with physical setbacks, and I still managed to keep most of my six going on.
Right. It's funny because I have a brother who's probably he's closer to your age, my older brother. And I remember one day he pulled me to I remember several things he told me in life. One thing, I was 18 when I left Chicago and came out to the Northwest, and my brother was here already. My brother looked at me, he said, if you gonna smoke them cigarettes, you better have some cardio endurance, or you gonna get your ass beat by a white boy who could outlast you for 3 minutes. That's the first thing he told me. Second thing he told me was, you got to get your eating habits in order, because if you look at the men in our family, they have a tendency to start gaining weight as they get older, and they start moving less. And when he told me that, I said, you know what? You're right. And that's not a trend that I wanted to follow. And it's so funny because my brother is in awesome shape at the age of basically 60, almost 60. And he's breaking what is considered the norm for other relatives of us who, just like you said, 35, 40, they say, oh yeah, I'm getting old. I'm at that age when. And it's like, yeah, I don't know who told you that was a universal law, but it ain't.
Yeah, I think about when I was training, I had this, because I used to always train the older folks since I was an older trainer. And I had this couple that came in, Pat and I think Don Burke. And he was 92, she was 88. They still went skiing like every weekend.
Oh,
And
wow.
they had spent a whole, lifetime of eating healthy, staying fit. He used to be like a mountain climbing instructor, and I forgot what she said she did. But I mean, I had to really walk fast to try to keep up with that lady in the gym when I was training and stuff.
Wow. Right.
And I would think clients that are in their 40s and 50s, complaining, and I got this person that comes in, this couple that comes in twice a week, well into their 80s and 90s. It's a lifestyle, and it's a lifelong thing.
Right. So many people start believing that they are a slave to genetics, or they're a slave to the trends that their family set. And that was one of the first things that I learned going into the fitness world, is that just because it happened to your mom don't mean it got to happen to you. Just because it happened to your dad doesn't mean it has to happen to you. There's some things you're not going to get around, but you don't have to be overweight. You don't have to have, diabetes. You don't have to have the cholesterol issues just because someone else had it. Black folks in general, we are very, very prone to just accepting that, oh, this runs in my family. There's some things that health-wise you're just not going to be able to get away from. I discovered that personally with some of the conditions that I found that I had, and some of these things are genetic. Some of these things are just, you win in the luck of the draw in the human lottery. But there are a lot of things that we tend to say, oh yeah, you know, my grandfather had that diabetes, so you know that's what happened to me. It's like, well, why don't you do something about it? So just because he had that and he was on insulin doesn't obligate you to eat the same food and do the same things. Like, there are options in life, and that's one of the biggest things I try to get across to people is you don't have to live your life a certain way. And with that, you also got to be careful, like we talked about a couple of minutes ago. You got to be careful what things you let yourself get comfortable with, because you'll start giving yourself that internal dialogue and that narrative that this is just what life is.
Since you mentioned that, I really want to speak on this because I face it all the time. It's like when I go to family gatherings and eat,
Mm-hmm.
and when I'm picking my foods, or sometimes I'll bring my own stuff because I know that it's just not going to be there. They laugh, they want to talk about me. It's just like,
Right.
no man in my family has lived past, on my dad's side of the family, lived past, what, 75, I think.
Wow. Wow.
I plan to break that trend. So I used to always eat a lot of, when I was trying to bodybuild, I used to eat a lot of meats and stuff. And
Mm.
so finally, with the inflammation issues I got on, I started backing off, cut out the red meats. And then I said, well, I'm going to try being a pescatarian. And then one day I just decided to become a vegan.
Okay.
And I see a lot more of African Americans are switching over, but there's still a huge stigma in our community as, you eating that rabbit food, you're eating those white folks food, you can be too skinny. And it's like, well, at this age, why do I need to pack all that stuff? And I'm not playing football anymore. I don't like I'm a horse. It's a personal
Right.
choice I'm making for longevity.
Right. Well, you know, like I said, we talk about black folks. It's funny because I tell people all the time, I can't be the spokesperson for all black people, but if you talk about black people in Chicago, you're gonna have to go through me. But one of the issues, like I said, is that comfort that, like, black people, and I'll say black people in America, we are very comfortable in pain, so to say. Like, everything's been rough for us in the first place. So there is this comfort with joint pain. Oh, I got arthritis. That's just what happens. Uh, I keep harping on, like, the diabetes, the cholesterol, these different issues that come about, and it's just now getting to the point where black folks are starting to look at the diet that we have, and I think it's part of the fact that we're starting to be more open to information and realize that some things affect everybody, but those things that affect everybody affect us just that much more.
Right.
So when you talk about you trying to be one who's preserving your life, and it's hard for them to understand, that term comfort food is very strong. And say that from the standpoint of, we eat the foods that grandma cooked and our auntie cooked, and that the traditional recipes that have been passed down, and they taste good and they make you feel good in the moment. That satiety kicks in, and you feel good and relaxed. But are you really relaxed, or is your body trying to do all the work it has to do to digest that food? Then we start talking about packing that extra weight on, like you said. And when we have these relatives who start talking about having joint pain or how it's hard for them to move, they don't think about the inflammation caused by the food. They don't think about the extra stress on their skeletal structure from all the weight that they're carrying. And when people take the time to actually start looking at those things, then you start making more sense out of the reasoning behind eating foods that are going to help you live longer versus just eating foods that are good in the moment. I think uh, one of the most powerful writings that I read was "How to Eat to Live" by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I read that when I was 19, and it was all, actually I had this whole book of Message to the Black Man, How to Eat to Live. Had several of those in there. And when it started breaking down the fact that everything in your body depends on muscular contractions, so to say, all the tissue is really the same in your body, just some moving at faster paces. And you think about when you put something into your stomach, that's your stomach has to work to digest that. It started making sense to me. It was like, oh, I probably need more vegetables and fruit. Oh, I need to stop eating as much red meat. So I kind of went through the same pathway as you, so far as putting the red meat off to the side and increasing my intake of fish and seafood. And I've never gone full-blown pescatarian, but I know that it's coming because it's a next step for me. It's just what it is. You know, when you start being more conscious of what you're eating, you just start you make changes. And it's not about these drastic changes. So even when you talk about how you made the transition slowly into the vegan lifestyle, I see so many people. I used to witness it a lot back before there were so many vegan options, but people will just go from a burger one day to I'm vegan tomorrow, and then they get sick because they didn't know the right transition to go into that.
Right.
My mother is an herbalist in Chicago. Is one of my mothers, and she tells me flat out, you know, actually she's the first person who introduced me to pescatarianism when I was 7 years old. And to this day, when she talks to me, she says, look, if you're going to start making transitions, you don't just cut something you've been eating for 40 years out. You got to slowly make that move and phase things out. But you also have to look for, as we know in the gym world, supplements to help with that. And, you know, supplementation is it's a broad stroke term, because you can use that even when we're talking about exercise. There's supplemental exercises. But there has to be an understanding of what's going on with your body, and we don't have that as widespread as it should be. People in our culture are not as conscious about what they're putting in and what the output of the body is based on that. I say to people all the time, I say, you put better gas in your car than you put food in your body. So Clark, I'll tell you, you get me talking, I'll go on and on and on.
This is good, man. This is what the viewers need. Yeah, that reminds me of yesterday. I checked my inbox on my messenger, and I'm kind of bad at that because a lot of times, you know, people are sending you a bunch of junk. But it was a young lady that I've known since I was a kid. Me and her brother used to be in the same class in elementary school, and she was having a debate with her niece. And the subject was, you know, water consumption, and they wanted to know if drinking like Perrier water and carbonated water was bad for you. Well, let me think about that for a moment. I said the carbonated beverages that they've all tested to come up with that anecdotal evidence all contain sugar. It was Coke, ginger ales that have been sweetened, stuff like that. And so when I replied back with my answer, she hit me back and she said, you know, you don't know how much that means to me. And I said, well, I appreciate the fact that you considered me to, you know, get the information. And she said, well, you're the first person I would think of. And I said, wow, that's really powerful. So dialogue like this is, you know, invaluable to the folks out there, because there's a
Right.
lot of people that are, you know, just don't have any idea where to start. They pick up a few tidbits of information here and there. They can get on that path and start actually researching the information themselves.
Right. Now, I like what you were just saying, the story you were just telling about the person reaching out to you. And that's a conversation. There's another side on that conversation that I tend to go into with people, because folks will say, hey D, same thing happens with me. They say, hey D, is this bad for you? And someone says, well, you know, so we're talking about what you just said. Someone says, is carbonated water bad for you? It's like, well, are we talking about carbonated water? Or are we talking about soda? Right? Are we talking about Coca-Cola? You know, and people say, well, hey D, is bread bad for you? I say, well, are we talking about bread in a healthy diet, a clean diet? Are we talking about bread as opposed to potato chips? I'd rather you eat bread than eat potato chips.
Exactly.
Right? So the thing that we encounter a lot with folks are they already doing horrible as it is, and they asking you what's bad for you. It's like, well, let's look at everything you're doing. If you let's not pull this one thing out, and you want me to demonize that one thing when you got a whole plague of devils sitting right there in your lap. Let's find the good thing for you. And I tell people all the time, it's just like you catch what I do, the 50-50-50. And it's literally, well, it's now about 10 minutes long because I added a 500-meter row to it. So I do the 50-50-50 plus a 500-meter row, right? Now, it's a 10-minute deal. I tell people all the time, this is what I put together and committed to doing daily. That's my one thing. I don't drink my protein shake every day. I don't drink my green tea every day. But right now I could tell you for 60 days straight I did my 50-50-50. So when you come to me, when anyone comes to me and they say, "Hey D, is this good for you?" I ask them what's the opposite. Is it good for you versus what? Now, on the level of trying to find something that's good for you, let's pick one thing that you aren't doing that can contribute to your life, and you try to do that one thing every day. Because you don't go from zero. When it comes to your health and fitness, you don't go from 0 to 60. Even the people who have these life-threatening situations and the doctors tell them you got to change your lifestyle, going from 0 to 60 don't help them. They have to start making gradual moves. You pull something out, you put something back in. It's just like a person who smokes cigarettes. If you used to chain smoking all day, you got to find something to kind of deal with this habit, whether you flipping a pen in your pen or you got a chew stick, you got to take something out and put something in. And that's what we got to get people to understand is it's not about you just wiping everything off the table. It's about you finding one positive thing that you can do consistently and not fall off from. And once that goes so far, you add to it. And now you got 2 positive things and you got 3. And it starts changing everything. Because that's how my 50-50-50 started. I said, you know what? I'm going to do 50 kettlebell swings every day for the next 30 days. And it felt so good to be back moving. I got a home gym that I wasn't utilizing. It felt so good to be going. I said, I can't stop, but I'm not just going to keep doing kettlebell swings. Let me add something to it. And then after that 30 days, I said, let me add something else. And it'll just keep going and keep going. Now, when you have a habit that's as simple as carrying a container around with you and making sure that you drink 3 of those worth of water every day, or even if you're a person who doesn't, you say, I'm going to drink 1 of those worth of water every day. That's not something that takes a lot of effort. Just like the workouts that I do are 10-minute workouts, right? So we got to start getting people to think positively. You talk about in the earlier stage of this conversation, you talked about vibration. And I tell a lot of my folks who come to me for counsel, I say, listen, we could talk about the bad things you're doing, but then we speaking on a low vibration. Let's talk about let's talk about the things we're gonna do and the things that are positive. Let's find that positive thing and speak on doing that versus speaking on what you need to stop doing. Because that's a vibration, that's a frequency. You got to speak on those higher frequencies. So for some people, the higher frequency is, I'm gonna drink water today.
Right.
You know, so we have to get people in general to stop vibrating on those low level frequencies. And sometimes the vibration of that low level frequency is as simple as saying, oh, I need to stop doing this. Quit vibrating over there.
Right.
Stop vibrating over there. We got to take you over to what you gonna do versus living in what you need to get away from.
Well, one of the things that I find is when you're trying to do that, sometimes you got to shrink the size of your circle.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Um, I've seen that firsthand. The funny side, my brother, I give him a hard time. The first time I did a bodybuilding show, my brother would tease me from here to hell's high end about my diet and how I was counting my calories and my carbs and my proteins and how I was eating this and leaving that out. And now my brother is the one who I had days where he's past it with me now, but he went through about a year where within the first 5 minutes of knowing him, you was gonna know he was a vegan. and I said, dude, your eating is more strict than mine, but that's, that goes to show, even when you shrink that circle, like you say, you still will have that influence on people, because when they can't sit in your circle and criticize you, now they got to sit outside and watch. And then they start seeing that change and they say, oh, well, maybe let me check something out, Right.
And it's either they're going to step away or they're going to try to emulate what you're doing. Some
Right.
like, because I've always used like the MyFitnessPal.
Okay.
Track calories, and I got myself a food scale. And my wife was always like, "Why are you doing this? Why that takes too long?" And so then when she decided that she wanted to change her body composition a little bit, she started counting her calories. She got on that Noom program for a minute, and then I saw her using my food scale. I've seen her actually using some measuring cups. And so if you set the example, lead by example, then others will fall in line.
Right.
And I really love that, you can have a positive influence on people by just sticking to what your heart's telling you to do.
Right. Right. And the one thing that I definitely learned throughout the years is it's not necessary to be dogmatic either. And that's another thing of another point of learning that we have to spread is the dogmatic thought process around health and fitness is not necessary for you to be successful, and it's not necessary when communicating to other people.
Exactly. Because for one, you get it makes people feel like they're being picked on, like
Right.
they're being ridiculed, and they'll get defensive and they're going to shut down. So they're not going to be willing to receive the information. So that's what I've learned about, how energy circulates. It's like you can
Right.
show the positive vibe, you model the behavior that you would like to see, and sooner or later people are going to buy into it. They're going to say, hey, this is having a calming effect on him. He's getting the results. He seems to look healthier. He seems to be happier. Any one of those can be
Right.
a factor in helping people shift their mentality. So as we get older, injuries from just doing common things. I mean, when I was training, sometimes I'd hear people come in and say, well, I was just reaching to grab a bag of flour off the shelf and I hurt my shoulder.
I was just talking about this. We live in a front-loaded society. And for folks who don't necessarily understand what I mean when I say that, we are forever here. Everything we do is in front of us, whether we're driving, we're writing, eating, we move forward. Everything we do is in front of us. And what people don't understand with the body is it's a system of basically levers and pulleys that are balanced from left to right and front to back, also top to bottom. When you start talking about the shoulder in particular, the shoulder is the most complex joint in the human body. And that is simply because with the shoulder, you have what's called a ball and socket joint, except the thing with the humerus, which is the upper bone of the arm. It's not in anything of a bony nature. It's surrounded by muscular tissue, and it's held in place by a system that is balanced from the front of your body to the back of your body. So if you are not doing things to keep the shoulder strong, so far as the muscles on the back or the scapular muscles that hold it in place, if you're not doing things to keep the muscles in the ribs that hold it in place strong, as you get older and that front of your shoulder is the front part of your body is taking over, the pec, the deltoid, and bicep, you start reaching here and something's out of place, it's wearing on you. It's super common because, like I say, the shoulder is it's so complex just because of the way it's set up. I also teach kinesiology at a massage school, so I can get into breaking down the shoulder like piece by piece. It doesn't necessarily make sense from a verbal standpoint, but the you're literally talking about you're talking about a joint that's suspended by muscles. It's not stuck up inside a bone. It's suspended by muscles. So the minute one of those muscles is hurt or injured, other muscles start taking over and doing more work than they're supposed to. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We get so used to living with pain. What a lot of people will do is they hurt themselves and they say, I'm going to take it easy for a while. And they feel like the pain has gone away because it's just not bothering them as much as it was. But the issue isn't healed. The issue is not, it's not fixed yet. And they don't understand that. And then they try to go back to their normal way of moving and everything else. And it just exacerbates it and makes it worse and worse. And the next thing you know, some surgeon who gives two fucks about you at the end of the day say, oh yeah, we need to replace your shoulder. And you could just as well do rehab and corrective work. So it's really a matter of balance, or as the balanced hand, which is my business, it's a matter of balancing out the body. You have to do the right things to keep the muscles working in unison with each other. You have to do the right things to keep your posture proper. You have to be conscious of your movement. Not enough people are conscious of their movement. We compensate all the time. You've seen it before. Someone hurts their hip. What happens? That other hip starts bearing the weight because they don't want to put weight on that one side. You hurt your shoulder. You're no longer lifting here. You start doing this and doing this, or using the other arm to make a movement happen. And that just creates the compensation where the body says, well, you're not doing this movement anymore, so ain't no point in me firing these muscles as much as I did, and I'm going to let these other muscles take over, and the next thing you know, you can't move. So that's me trying to give as much of a nutshell of an answer as I can about that one.
I see the folks in there doing like nothing but bench presses, and
Right.
then they don't do any type of stretching, and they leave the gym. It's like they spend all day working on the chest workout, and then pretty soon you see them when they're walking like this. And
Right.
what people don't understand, and this really hit home when I was studying that corrective exercise specialist exam, is that you have the eccentric and the concentric contractions, and
Right.
also if you don't maintain proper postural alignment, you're prone to injure yourself. You're going to injure yourself. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
It's going to break at its weakest place, pretty much.
Well, I'll go a little more into it because you did bring up the shoulder. So the anatomical name, the correct name for what we label as the shoulder muscle is the deltoid, right? And it's called the deltoid because of Greek, was it delta? So the muscle is actually the shape of an upside down triangle. People think about the shoulder, and the first thing they think about is the deltoid. The deltoid actually originates all the way over here on the clavicle. People don't know that. It originates on the clavicle and it runs all the way around to the back on the spine of the scapula. So it wraps all the way from here around and then inserts down here at a spot we call the deltoid tuberosity. Now, if we talk about the shoulder, we have to talk about one of the factors of the shoulder being that the shoulder is a single muscle that has its own agonist-antagonist relationship, which means, I'll give an example. Whenever we think about the bicep, we say the bicep will close down the arm, the tricep extends it. So that's the agonist-antagonist relationship. The deltoid does that all with itself. So if I'm using my anterior deltoid to lift or go into what we call flexion, The posterior deltoid is what takes me into extension. And then the medial is what helps me with my abduction. So the deltoid works for and against itself, but the deltoid is not the main muscle that controls shoulder movement. The shoulder is controlled by the rotator cuff. And the rotator cuff is not a single muscle. So you'll hear people say, oh, I had a rotator cuff tear. And the first thing I say is, which muscle? They say, huh? Which muscle? There are 4 muscles in the rotator cuff. And those muscles create internal rotation, external rotation. They help with abduction, adduction, flexion, and extension. And then the deltoid is the bigger, which is kind of like that shield, and it covers and it helps with those. It does those movements also. So what a lot of folks don't understand is the shoulder is meant to do every single motion that there is, the shoulder does. But we don't take care of those motions. We either are lifting, pushing, pulling. And people aren't taking the time to keep their rotator cuff strong by exercising their, just doing rotational movements, getting the muscles to fire, keeping fluids in the shoulder just by movement and helping with circulation. So that's really what happens. It's that overuse of certain movements without being aware of the movement that you're making and how it should go and letting your body actually function, and underuse of other muscles. And it's like, I always use cars are just an easy reference for me. But if you have 4 cars and you leave 2 of them in the driveway for years upon years upon years, and you never start them up and you're driving the other ones, you're going to end up having to do a lot of work to get those cars back on the road if you ever want to drive them again. Or they just sit there, rust out, and they become scrap metal. So when we start looking at the body, and this is one of the things, like I said, when I was going into massage after all these years of training myself and training other people, if we start looking at the body based on what it is meant to do and its functional capabilities, we start putting more into what we do with the body. And you start talking about the shoulder. The shoulder, when you think about people in the gym doing doing any kind of pressing or tricep dips, so to say, right? The shoulder is bearing weight when you do a dip. It's still jamming the shoulder up into the joint, right? Into the socket. They say that as people get older, they stop using their legs to get out of chairs, right? So when people sit down and stand up, they use their arms and they're pushing up out of chairs. And that's why you see older folks who all of a sudden need walkers and need canes and they can't squat because they stop using their legs. So guess what happens? Now your shoulders are taking the brunt of even more work that's supposed to be done by your hips. And that's why you have all these different scenarios where somebody say, all of a sudden my shoulders just started going. No, your shoulder didn't go bad. You started putting extra weight on your shoulder that it didn't need.
But yeah, I've witnessed that firsthand watching my mother over the years, who's now 82 years old, and she's had shoulder surgery, she's had both knees done, and she's had her hip done. But when she gets up, a lot of times I watch her, she has one hand on the cane and she has the other hand here, and she's trying to push herself up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but she's had to do some physical therapy work. She spent almost 3 years straight doing physical therapy, and she's learned how to deal with it. But it's just, something to think about as we grow older. That's why it's important to make sure that we utilize all those muscles. That's why
Right.
we maintain a holistic fitness and nutrition program so we can go ahead and age gracefully. I mean, this body's not designed to last forever. Our inner being will, but our bodies are going to break down at some point. We're just trying to prolong how long that it's useful.
Right. And it is the most simple things. Not everyone needs to go to the gym and lift heavy weights, but everyone should be conscious of how they move. Everyone should make sure that when they're walking, they're not shuffling and that they actually are trying to use their hips to go back swinging movements. Um, there are such simple things that help rewire the brain with movement, like walking backwards or crawling on the floor. Like there are all these little bitty things that anyone can do that will enhance their life. And like you said, it's extremely holistic.
Exactly. So we're about to wind this episode down. I want to make sure that people can find out about how to get a hold of you if they want to take advantage of what you have to offer. So what is your social media and your business? I'll put that in the description for folks, but go ahead and say it for us.
I appreciate that. Well, the name of my massage and body works practice is The Balanced Hand. I am located in Vancouver, Washington. Um, I can be found on social media. I have a page on Facebook, which is The Balanced Hand Massage and Body Works. You can also find me on Instagram, where as of lately, I've been doing a lot of home workout related posts. But on Instagram, you can find me at The Balanced Hand Official. And you'll see me on there doing workouts. You'll see my logo. I always have this shirt showing in some shape, form, or fashion. But that's how you can find me. You can contact me directly through my website, which is www.thebalancedhand.com also.
All right, and I see you got that shirt on, and I've seen several different variations of that shirt in colors on
Oh
your
yeah.
Instagram. So if people want to get your merchandise, they can get it through your site.
They can get my merchandise directly through me. Instagram is the best way. I don't have it set up on the site, but Instagram is where you'll find it. I have the Balance Hand, the standard logo. I also have a new design that I put together called the Voodoo Saint, which has the logo hidden in it. And that's a whole nother conversation how I came up with the Voodoo Saint. But yeah, I do have merch that people can get their hands on, tanks and regular tees if you want.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. You can find me on YouTube. Just type in my name in the search at Clark Boozer. And thanks again. Peace out.